if there is a need for adaptive clothing, why is it that people aren't supporting enough to those brands that are actually actively doing this? Hi everyone, welcome back to my podcast, Is Fashion Real? I'm back with another episode, this time just talking about my own journey in the fashion world and as to why this podcast actually exists. Because the main reason why it does exist, if you watch the first kind of trailer of this podcast, I was speaking about fashion technology and adaptive fashion, and those are the two fields that I focused on for the past few years. And actually also teaching as well, and a bunch of other things, but these are the two main fields that I've been actually focusing on with the roles that I've been doing. And within that, I've noticed a lot of things that I'm like, something is quite strange, or there needs to be a lot more work in that area, etc. So this series specifically is speaking about the adaptive fashion field and how not so well it's been doing compared to what I would have expected by now, considering, you know, the culture has shifted since before, and, you know, everyone seems to be more open-minded. There's Gen Z that's doing all this stuff, a bit more activism going on there. But actually, when you think about what's actually happening in the fashion industry, especially adaptive fashion or inclusive fashion, as I like to call it, there's not as much going on compared to what I think should be happening. So yeah, just join me on this series all about that. When it comes to adaptive fashion specifically, that started when I was in my bachelor's. And in the bachelor's, it was Nottingham Trent University. Shout out to you guys. And I was studying fashion design and DCC, which is design, culture and context. So that was the theory side of things. But when it came to the course itself, overall, it was 3 years, and it was specifically to learn all the sewing things and all of those basics, and then put that into practice for your final year, where you have the big show and everything is like all exciting to really just end with a bang, pretty much. Now, with that whole experience, it was up and down, and I did actually do a vlog on that on YouTube. You can check that out as well, of a day in the life of a fashion student. But what I didn't capture was the journey to this adaptive fashion field, because I wasn't vlogging back then. But also there wasn't much to vlog because at that time, it was my second year. If we kind of rewind back, it was the second year of the bachelor's. And that's where this competition was introduced to us. A lady named Linda had a skiing accident, and she was actually an alumni at Nottingham Trent. When she was actually shopping after the skiing accident, she had to be in a wheelchair for a number of months. And during that time, she couldn't actually find clothing that was suitable for her temporary situation there. And then she thought, well, there are actually many people out there who have that problem, but probably for their whole lives, because disability is not just temporary for some people. So she thought, okay, this is the perfect time to maybe do something about it. So she actually then went to Nottingham Trent and pitched the idea, and they loved it. And then that's how the competition came about. So I didn't even get anywhere with that competition. I really thought about it. It was quite upsetting because I really thought about it. I was really into it, and I designed everything and submitted, but I wasn't even a finalist because the teachers were in charge of choosing the finalists. So that's to the teachers. Actually, but funny enough, after that, when it was now time to write my dissertation, fast forward to now the third year after the placement year, I then focused my dissertation on why disability is not represented very much or very well as well in fashion media specifically at that time. So that's when I reached back out to Linda and did an interview, and I did a bunch of other interviews and research and all this stuff, and wrote my paper. And I do also have a video on the actual visual dissertation because we had to kind of do both. So I have that on my YouTube channel as well, so you can check that out. But that was really the beginning of that research and adaptive fashion field. At the time, it really wasn't really a thing. I don't think it was even adaptive fashion wasn't really that at the time, if that makes sense, as much as it is now, because now it's kind of a thing. I actually did always have this little glimpse into disability and the fashion industry because of my brothers. Specifically, the brother that follows me in terms of order of births, he actually has autism, and he was never really interested, and still is not interested in jeans or anything that some of us without any disabilities would be able to tolerate a bit more. So that's really to do with the textures of a garment. So if the jeans are super tight, like skinny jeans, we tend to just wear them because they look cute, but they're not actually the most comfortable. If you want to sit down, they're not the most comfortable. Just to wear them is quite a lot of work as well. So really, I think in general, we have been used to a certain way of dressing in general. And that obviously is due to the standardized way of doing things in fashion, from the production all the way to the actual retail and what is actually being sold. So that then means people with disabilities have to then actually adapt to whatever is already out there, or they're going to have custom made clothes, and that can be a little bit pricey. So because of all that, I was already kind of used to that. So my brother would only wear joggers, and still kind of just, that's really just his go-to joggers that are at least, soft. If you kind of look at fleece fabric in the interior is super nice and cozy. So we all love that, but obviously in the summer, it's not the best thing. It's not the most ideal thing to wear. So really, those are the kind of things that I was already exposed to way before this competition came about in the school. But I never knew I could do anything about it until the competition came. So I do think that it did its thing, even if I wasn't successful with the competition itself. It did definitely do its thing, because now it opened my eyes to a bigger picture, So now I graduated from the bachelor's. I finished the dissertation. I did want to focus more on the disability side with the master's that I ended up doing afterwards, just because in the bachelor's, it was a little bit difficult to kind of cram in everything, all the research that I was doing for the dissertation, and then try to translate it to the design. And that's why I decided I would rather dedicate a full master's on that, which is why I then moved to Paris after that. And I was studying design for social impact. And it is one of three schools, I would say, in the world at the time that was actually offering that. And I really liked the idea of obviously moving to Paris as well. It made things a lot easier. There was another one in Scotland, but actually the syllabus is quite different. So Paris was a no-brainer for me. Let's go. That's where I really got a lot more research done. I was speaking to people from the NHS. I was interviewing people with disabilities and also people without. And that part is the most important thing about my brand that I now have, because I wanted it to be a brand that is not just targeted at people with disabilities and, hey, you've got a disability, come wear my clothes. But actually rather, hey, I have something that everyone can wear, and it includes you with a disability, so come and have a look. And that is why I did that research, and then I made the Venn diagram. I did speak about this in another video on my YouTube channel about that. But in summary, it's pretty much a Venn diagram that had 3 circles. One that was all the research of what I found for people with disabilities who had physical disabilities, and they were specifically focused on the challenges that they have when putting on clothes, while wearing the clothes, taking them off, etc. And then those with cognitive disabilities. So that was actually more towards what I discussed about with my brother, where it's more textures, things that, you know, may not necessarily be how you physically put on a garment, but things that are to do with your day-to-day lifestyle or how you just react to things. So hypersensitivity was definitely one of them, because that links with the cognitive disabilities that I researched. And then the third circle in the Venn diagram was focusing on those without any disabilities, but just general issues that people experience, such as zips on the back of dresses that aren't really accessible, that sometimes you just need your partner to help you out to zip up, or you know, the skinny jeans that I spoke about, or itchy tights, all those things that are very general and that anyone can experience. So because of that, I then was thinking about what are the best designs that I can really come up with to try and tick like many boxes within each of these circles in one garment, or at least half of them at least in one garment. So yeah, that's how I came up with my designs, and I think we can definitely talk about that in another episode, but generally this has really just been my journey. So, and I think the really most challenging part about this was the fact that the research, there wasn't much to research at the time, because no other brands were really doing this, except Tommy Hilfiger, who did do their adaptive line around that time. They started off with kids, and then they did that for adults as well. And then there was Kinsuki Clothing, which was a British brand, very small but very impactful, because actually they were one of the people at the beginning actually doing this on a really cool level for a small brand, I think. They were featured on many press and a bunch of things. But actually that's something that I did want to talk about on this podcast. Unfortunately, I can't interview the founder, but we have been in contact and we have been chatting about, you know, kind of her journey on this, as the brand has actually now recently shut down, which is really a shame. But it is actually one of the reasons why I started this podcast as well, because I'm just like, if there is a need for adaptive clothing, why is it that people aren't supporting enough to those brands that are actually actively doing this? And this is from an anecdotal point of view as well, because I have received a lot of support, but there is certain support that you also need in order to grow much further and for this to really be a sustainable brand, not sustainable in terms of the fabrics and stuff, but actually just for it to be sustained for the long run. And that has been challenging, because one, when I was doing the masters and doing the research, and even after that, I had a lot of pushback from certain professionals who weren't able to obviously authorize access to maybe clients in the clinic or hospitals, etc. There's so much paperwork involved, which obviously makes sense, and I was prepared for that. But I think what was most frustrating about this was just the fact that you want to help, you want to do something, and then you just getting told, no, we can't do that. No, this kind of looks like something that we have to authorize, like what we do with blood samples. And I'm like, guys, I'm not doing all that. I just need to speak to some clients about their disabilities or their conditions when they're using a wheelchair, whatever, and then get that research, and then I can actually help them. But actually that has really been a difficult thing to do, just because there's so much paperwork involved. So I'm actually happy for the people from NHS that I was able to speak with, because otherwise, yeah, it was really it was a tough time. But the other thing that I faced was when I was doing that research and I was developing my designs, etc., during the masters. A lot of people really just didn't see the vision. So they just didn't understand how you can have clothing that is inclusive of different disabilities. And yeah, they just thought, oh no, there's no way that you can do that. There's no way that you can, get so many solutions in one garment. And But I was really determined to do it. And those are the same people actually that after I launched my brand, and even the first samples before the brand, they were like, oh, wow, okay, now I get it. But that should be encouragement for some of you guys as well. If you are thinking of doing a niche brand like this, of actually sometimes some people won't believe in your idea or they just won't see the vision. So they don't mean ill of anything that they're saying, but it could just literally just be that they just don't understand it because you're the one with the vision and not them. So those are the things that I did have to face there. But now fast forward to having launched the brand, I believe 2 years after graduating, alongside actually working and, you know, proper like job on the side. I then launched the brand and in Paris, but the brand is actually still a UK brand. But yeah, that was really a fun experience, and the support I received there was a lot from people offering to be photographers, to people who just want to put me in press. And actually I got more press probably like more recently than back then. And that's another thing. Sometimes things kick in a lot slower than you think because, that was that. But anyway, the brand is now launched. I did go a lot more commercial with it just because it was at first really extravagant dress, extravagant jumpsuit, things you can wear to a wedding, things you can wear to the Oscars. And then I was given advice as well to kind of tone it down a little bit because there are people who can probably benefit from this as well, the functionality of the garments at work. And that is obviously part of the research that I had been doing. So that was that. So that's why I ended up doing blazer, trousers and skirt as the first one. I am looking to do more things like dresses and etc. But yeah, that part is super exciting. And also looking into menswear because I know a lot of men had asked for that as well. But one thing that I did notice is the fact that you're not selling as much. Yeah, the sales had not been so great and just not what you expect because it's obviously inclusive. The zips open in a certain way where you can also style it in a certain way, have slits, the lapels fall down and you get to just be different for people with or without disabilities. And actually for those with disabilities, the functional side of things, it's really just kind of perfect for those who maybe need a guardian and the guardian doesn't have to roll them around to put it on. They just unzip everything and then zip it up once they've laid on top of it. And also those with who are amputated or who just have limited mobility, there are magnetic zips on the blazer as one of the options. And all of this stuff, obviously when finally people saw the samples, finally people saw the designs, they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then I was featured on ITV News London at some point as well, just before COVID. And yeah, people were like, yeah, this is fantastic. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that someone's doing this. So when you hear all that feedback, you're expecting that people are going to jump at the opportunity and you're going to sell out and stuff. Not necessarily sell out from a technical perspective and a business model perspective, but, you know, just sell a lot. But yeah, it just didn't happen that way. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's not all about money, but it's really also proof of concept. It's like proof that people are willing to spend. And again, when speaking to people who advise about these things, they're saying, okay, well, if don't, sell yourself short with the brand, don't try to make a loss on purpose by making the prices way lower than what actually needs to be, not just for profit perspective, but even just to break even. Yeah, it's like, yeah, people who are willing to spend, they will spend it. So I'm like, okay, fine. Literally did that. And then I know price was definitely one of the issues that I faced because a lot of people were saying that actually. Like they'll be like, oh, wow, this is nice. How much is this? Even at exhibition that I did after the brand launched, people would say, wow, this is such a cool idea. They love it. The blazer again was like the showstopper. But now they hear the price. Oh, yeah, sorry, I can't do that. from a business perspective, any business is going to experience certain things like this, certain turmoils like this. And it's a good thing because you can like rejig things. So in this case, simply changing the manufacturer so that the prices can be lower, you know, things like that are the things that I have been working on really. But I just thought it would be great to talk about this because then that way it's really just an honest conversation. But that's really the journey side of things. And I think I'm just going to have to do a part 2 because there's a lot more to discuss now that I'm in the industry. I've launched the brand. I've spoken to you about the journey there. And now actually about the reality of adaptive fashion in general, because now it's not really just about my brand, it's about what I've seen with others as well. So join me for part 2 of this episode, and thank you so much for listening this far. Hopefully you are being inspired as well at the same time when you're listening to this. And if you have any comments about your journey, just launching a fashion brand in general, or even fashion tech service or product, please put it in the comments on YouTube or any platform that you're listening to this on, and we can have a chat. Bye.